Hi, I'm Amy Hannon, and nothing thrills me more than people and food. I'm a preacher's wife, a mom of 3, and I own my own specialty kitchen store. I've kept an open door and a well-stocked fridge, which means I have fed a lot of mouths over the years. So welcome to my kitchen. This is Cooking Today. Hi, welcome to my kitchen. You are never gonna believe what I'm cooking for tonight. You'll think I'm making this up. My son was a running back this year at Harbor High School, and he told his linemen that if they blocked for him well enough for him to get 2,000 yards this season, that we would cook the whole offensive line and the coaches any dinner they wanted. Can you believe he even promised that? Who promises that? Well, there's the good news is that they blocked for him and he got that great season. And so guess what we're doing tonight? We're hosting the linemen. We're hosting some big old boys. My husband has a big, beautiful pork butt on the green egg downstairs. He woke up at 5 a.m. this morning, as a matter of fact, to get that in the smoker. And I am making our very 2 favorite classic barbecue side items. Remember when we made pulled pork? And I told y'all that I had a great baked bean and mac and cheese recipe. I told you that I was going to show it to you soon. And that's what we're making today. These delicious skillet spicy beans that are a little bit sweet, a little bit salty, a little bit peppery, jalapenos and good stuff in it. And it starts with bacon. So I've just taken a couple of pieces of bacon and we've cut them up and we're sauteing them in our brazier. And you know our brazier is the hardest working thing in our kitchen. I mean, you've seen them. And so I've got these going right now. I'm going to just, those are spitting a little bit. I'm gonna back up. I put a little bit of olive oil on the bottom of my skillet real quick just to kind of get it going. And that's why that's especially hot right now. But it's gonna help me get a good little crisp on those bacon pieces. And what we're gonna do is get this bacon crispy. I'm gonna let that go right there for a minute. We're gonna get that bacon nice and crispy and then pull it out, reserve the liquid, and then let that bacon grease get in those beans, and we're gonna cook them real slow with a lot of brown sugar. And then at the very end, we'll put those crispy bacon pieces back into the baked beans and stir them in so that it doesn't get soggy. Just kind of gets that good salty, crisp, smoky bite in the beans. Delicious. So that is going. And then I have already chopped a medium onion. We're gonna actually put those in next when the bacon gets nice and crisp. I'm gonna check it again because that was awful hot. And then I'm also making Euna Mae's mac and cheese. And when I say Euna Mae's, I mean Euna Mae's. Like, this is the mac and cheese recipe that we had at Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, birthdays. Anytime we ate at her house, she made this recipe. It is really good. And I have a friend, my friend Meredith. She considers herself a mac and cheese connoisseur, kind of a snob. And she swears by this mac and cheese recipe, and it is absolutely as easy as it can be. It may just change your life if you're a mac and cheese person. Good, good stuff. Okay, so I have got this bacon sauteing away, getting nice and crisp. And what I have ready to go right here is just a little tray with a paper towel on it because we want to drain that liquid. You know, we'll pull that out and let the bacon drain right there real quick, get some of the grease out and set that aside. And so what we want to go ahead and do that we can prep right away is some of the stuff that's going to go down inside of our macaroni and cheese. I'm telling you, you got to try this one. It is so easy. It doesn't have like a ton of cheeses. I've seen recipes that have, you know, a whole bunch of different kinds of cheese in it, and I don't know, sometimes they make like a really fancy like bechamel sauce, like a cream. This is cheese and butter and half. I mean, you don't get any easier than that, or old-fashioned, right? So I've got my butters opened. We have a little bit of half and half right here that I've got at room temperature. We don't want it to be freezing cold because when we pour it into our nice warm cooked macaroni. We don't want it to shock it. We really want to kind of go ahead and incorporate that nice kind of room temperature half and half in there. And then we have this, you know, everyone's favorite block of cheese. Now here's the kicker. You ready? We're going to use this whole 2-pound block. We are. We're going to do it. It is so creamy. It melts like nothing else. And we're going to put it in here. Now, let me remind you, we're making a bunch of mac and cheese and a bunch of beans because I'm feeding a football team tonight. And so I'm going big. You can split this recipe just for like your family at, you know, at night on any given weeknight. But I'm actually making a huge, huge pan of it to feed about 16 or 18 big boys tonight. And this is one of Luke's very, very favorites. He can eat his weight in Granny Nelson's mac and cheese. That is for sure. Okay, we are getting close on our bacon. So we're going to use this 2-pound loaf, and I'm going to cube it. And we will come back. We'll drain our bacon. We'll go back to our beans. We're going to kind of bounce back and forth between our mac and our beans. And we're going to make the very best barbecue sides you've ever had. This is Cooking Today.
Iced tea, sponsored by Lipton.
Hi, we're back. We're making the very best loved barbecue side items. I'm actually feeding the offensive linemen tonight from Harbor High School who helped block for my son to have a really great football season this year. And that was the promise. And so we are making good on a word that we promised them in the fall. So we actually have a little bit of bacon grease that we've got reserved right here from when we made our bacon crispies. And we're going to saute our onion in that right now. Ooh, those are hot. We're going to get that going. And I've turned this down a little bit, kind of like low, medium low, because that is a really hot pan and really hot grease. And I don't want the grease, the bacon fat. I don't want that bacon fat to, you know, fry these onions. We just want them to saute and get some good color and get translucent. You know, we've done this down here before. I mean, this is just such a great flavor base to start so many recipes. So you know how it goes. We're going to saute those till they get a little bit translucent, a little bit tender, and then they get a tiny bit of color. And you'll have to remember also that there's a little olive oil in there as well. So right now what we're looking at, it's going to look like there's a ton of bacon fat. There really isn't. It's a lot more olive oil than fat. There's just enough in there to give it the good flavor that we want. Okay, so we are going to start heating our water for big old mac and cheese, best mac and cheese ever. And I actually have learned this recently. It's kind of changing my life, no kidding. But you actually, if you will heat your water, boil your water with the lid on it, it will boil so much faster because the heat is hitting that lid and it's going back down in the water. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to cover that. And that's on high boil. The hard part about that is that you can't just peek over your shoulder and see, you know, or you can really hear when, you know, when your water starts to boil. So we're going to have to peek at it a little bit. But it should boil a whole lot quicker. It's kind of magical. You'll be super excited about it. Okay, so we actually have a brand new cutting board that we've started over with. And I have sliced 2 pounds of the just straight up regular old American Velveeta, not any flavored ones. This is going to melt so easily. And you know what I think I may do? Let's go ahead. We're going to cut these down into a few more chunks because, you know, the smaller the pieces, the quicker that they are going to melt when we put this in those hot noodles. And this is another thing that's really important. And it's only important because Euna Mae did it this way, so of course that makes it like God's honest truth, right? We use jumbo elbow noodles or large elbow noodles, not the little regular ones. We want those big ones that get, I mean, they're like the size of your finger. They're like those big boys and they get so tender. And, you know, when they are big like that, then the sauce can actually get like down and into it. So they're gushy. It's so good. And this mac and cheese actually bakes a few minutes in the oven, as a matter of fact. so that it's gooey underneath, but just a little bit brownish with a little bit of that dried out crusty part. You know, the corner, those edges, oh, so good. I usually pull those out with my fingers right away, first bite. So good. Okay, I'm gonna leave those sitting there and give my hands a wash real quick. We've got those cubed. And we're gonna do the same thing with our butter in just a minute, kind of cut those down. And I'm gonna saute these onions. Ooh, they look good. Look at the color. See how they've just gotten a little bit of color, kind of brownish, goldenish on there. And look at those good. I love those flavors right there, those little bits that have come off the bottom of the skillet from the bacon. Okay, so nice and tender. So what we want to add to that is 2. Now remember, this is Feed an Army recipe. We're doing that on purpose. So if you need to cut this in half, you just cut it right away. I'm going to drain the liquid off of these pork and beans. And the reason I get pork and beans instead of some kind of like brand name that has seasoning and stuff in it is because we're going to season them ourselves. We don't want to start with beans that already have, you know, all that stuff in them. We're going to add our own brown sugar and our own jalapenos and our own spices to our beans. So we're just start with regular old pork and beans. And some people don't love that big piece of pork that's floating around in those pork and beans. You can fish that out if you don't want it. Pork and beans remind me of my dad. I bet we had pork and beans. We had pork and beans with hot dogs a lot on like Saturdays when we were younger and we'd be at home watching the Razorbacks play. Pork and beans, the way they look, the way they smell, totally remind me of my dad. He would actually eat them with a ruffled chip. It would like almost be like a dip for him. He'd put a little pork and beans on a white ruffled chip, pop it in his mouth. It never fails. I always think about my daddy with pork and beans. Ew, this is like lifting weights. I'm gonna pour these beans in here with our onions. And when we come back, we're gonna sauce these up, stir in some more goodness, and get going on our mac and cheese. This is Cooking Today. Hi, welcome back. We're finishing up our best loved barbecue sides. The most beautiful, spicy, sweet barbecue beans and Euna Mae's very, very, very famous macaroni and cheese recipe. We actually got our water up to a boil and we put our large elbow noodles in there, and they've been cooking for just a little bit of time while we were away. And then I stirred in our beans, our pork and beans that we drained. And what we're gonna add to these, this is the little bit of heat. We're adding a couple of tablespoons of these chopped jalapenos. Oh, yum, yum, yum. I'm gonna do 2 for now, because you can always add them to the top later. And then I'm gonna add about a half a cup or so of just a barbecue sauce. If you wanted to make your own barbecue sauce, you just go right ahead. It's not very hard. As a matter of fact, we may need to do that one day here. It's really good. And then we're gonna add a heaping hunk of dark brown sugar. I'm doing somewhere between about a quarter to about a third a cup. And I'm not gonna mush that down. I'm gonna let that kind of heap and be put in those beans. And I like the dark brown because the dark brown has a little more molasses in it. And molasses is what is so delicious, especially in these beans. So what we're gonna do here, I'm gonna turn this off because we're done on those. I'm gonna give this a good stir. And right now, the color is a little bit light, but we're gonna let these cook down a little bit and they're gonna get some nice, richer color. We're gonna always taste as we go because you wanna be sure that the flavor of the beans is what you want. If it needs a little more heat, add a little more jalapeno or even a blackening seasoning. And I actually may put a little of that in these beans this batch because we're having boys over and boys usually like to eat the spicy things. So I may add that in here just in a minute. Okay, so we've stirred those beans in. all of that good stuff. And I'm gonna lid this and let this just simmer. I'm gonna leave a little crack in there just so I can kind of keep my ear to it. Okay, and our jumbo noodles are finished. I've got my big strainer. We are going to need mitts because that's gonna be a hot pan. And oh, they're pretty. Remember how I said you need to use, the key is those large elbows. Whew. Because the large elbows, oh my word, the large elbows have all that space in them, and you can get that sauce all in there. And so they're squishy and yummy and gushy, and good mac and cheese is that way, in my opinion. Okay, I loosened those up. They were kind of sticking to the bottom. So we're gonna get these drained. And you don't have to just drain them to death. They're fine with a little bit of liquid in them. And you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna put our sticks of butter under here. And I told you earlier that you can always cut these up, but they're gonna melt pretty quick. The butter melts a whole lot quicker than the cheese does. So I'm putting those butter sticks right on the bottom. And then I'm pouring those noodles right back on top. And the heat from that, oh my gosh, those are smoking like crazy. The heat from that, it's gonna melt that butter with no trouble whatsoever, okay? And then on top, we're gonna add these cubes of our cheese in. And I'm gonna stir them down in there. Right now, we're just gonna put them in. But we're gonna stir them up. And then remember, we have about a cup of room temperature, half and half. You could heat that if you wanted to, but it's been sitting out since we started, so I think we're good. Give that some yummy, yummy liquid. And then I'm gonna give this a little stir. And then all we wanna do, I've turned that burner off, but it's still gonna be hot, and this pan is hot. Yeah, I think that butter's melted. I can't even feel it under there yet. I can't feel it anymore. It's gone. Oh, it smells good. Oh, cheese and butter. So what we're gonna do is put the lid back on this while it's hot, and I'm tucking that cheese kind of down inside there. And then just set this back on the stove, and then just kind of let the heat of it just melt that all down. And I have turned on my oven to 375, because as soon as this melts down, we'll just watch that a little bit. But as soon as that melts down, we're actually going to put it in a really pretty dish where it's a little bit more shallow and bake it for only about 5 to 7 minutes or so. And when we pull it out, it'll be gooey underneath with a little bit of those dried crispy pieces on the top. They're so good. And that's why we're gonna do it. We're gonna check on our skillet beans and watch our cheese melt. And when we come back, we're gonna wrap it up. This is cooking today. Hi, welcome back. We have got some of the most unbelievable, delicious smelling barbecue favorites, little side items that we are just finishing up. Our baked beans smell fantastic. You can smell that little bit of spice and a little heat, little sweet, and that smoky of the bacon that's in there. I actually tasted the sauce, and I went ahead and added a little bit of that blackening seasoning in there and stirred it in. It is so good. And the pretty part of that green from the jalapenos that are in there, I just love when there's a little extra color. So let's move these over here. Oh my gosh, so pretty. Okay, we're gonna move those over there. And then I'm going to stir in, remember the pieces of bacon that we made right at the very front of the show? We're just gonna take these, sprinkle them right in, and stir them in. You can just never have enough bacon in here, I'm telling you. We could have done double the amount of pieces. That's our mac and cheese. So what we've done with our mac is remember how we put the lid on it? And we put all the cheese and the butter and all the cream in there. And I told you, as soon as it was ready to go in the oven, we were gonna put that melty, creamy goodness in a big casserole dish and bake it for only about 5 or 6 minutes, just so that top layer gets kind of dried out and creamy underneath. Okay, let's take a peek. Oh my word. Oh my goodness, it's beautiful. Look how nice. Look at that vat of macaroni and cheese. Do you think that football players are gonna like to eat that? I think so. I know I told you before that my son Luke could eat that whole entire pan of that mac and cheese. The top of that has just started to dry. The bottom is gushy. Those big elbow noodles have just soaked in and drank up all that good liquid that's in there. So this is gonna be a great bite. This is gonna be a great bite. And we've got a beautiful pork butt coming off the green egg that we're gonna eat tonight, and thank those big boys for giving our son a really great season. This is cooking today.
Coffee sponsored by West Rock Coffee Company. Kitchenware is provided by Euna Mae's. Groceries provided by Harps, Hometown Fresh.